What's going on, everybody? Thanks for tuning back in. So today we're going to take a look at making a second plugin similar to the Move plugin we did in the last video, where this time we're going to be importing information about Pokemon themselves. Now, much like we did with the Move importer, we're going to put a limit on how many we're going to import. I'm going to stick to just the first 151 original Pokemon just to keep the scope small. That way it doesn't get out of control and it'll be easier to work with. And I'm very familiar with those ones anyways. Like, I didn't play a lot of the other games, so this one for me just kind of hits home. But that being said, this Pokemon importer is going to work just like the Move importer, where it's going to have a selection in the menu and it's going to import everything that we'll need for now. And in future videos, if we find that we need more information, we can go ahead and edit those importers in the future, alter the resources to match the new variables that we need. Much like the last video as well, first we're going to create the Pokemon resource itself, and if you want to stop there and just create them on your own, then you can, but the second half will be actually programming an importer to do the same thing that the Move importer did. I will be doing a lot of copy and paste just to keep the video moving, but the idea is the same and the code will be available for you inside of the repository. Okay guys, let's get into it. Just a quick side note, for the menus that we're eventually going to have for our UI, we need some UI sprites, but unfortunately I can't really find a good resource for it. So I'm going to be using this Let's Go Pikachu, Let's Go Eevee game sprites for my menu sprites. So when we do import our sprites, this is going to be the ones that I'm going to be using for the actual UI menu when you're looking at your party. This is the website, and I'll make sure to credit them inside of the documentation. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create our Pokemon resource. So we'll make the class and then go through and add anything else we need along the way. So inside of my scripts folder, I'm going to create inside of my gameplay. Inside of gameplay, we have the Moose folder. We're going to create a new folder and we're going to call it Pokemon. Inside of it, we're going to create a new script and we're going to call this Pokemon resource. And instead of inheriting node, we want this to inherit resource. Once you're inside your file, we're going to go ahead and do a couple things here. First thing we're going to do is we're going to do a namespace game.resources, or sorry, game.gameplay. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to add the global class decorator and the tool decorator to our resource. That way, once we go inside of our inspector and rebuild the project, we can actually create this resource file. So we'll go back and do that when this is all done. Next, I can just get rid of this import because I'm not going to need it. And then we're going to create a couple export categories. So we're going to divide this up into sections. And the first one is just going to be the basic info of the Pokemon. So for example, the first thing we're going to want is a public string name. And this is just going to be the actual name of the Pokemon. Not the name you give it, but the actual name. So like Pikachu or Charmander or something like that. The next thing you're going to want to export is the Pokemon ID. This will be useful to us in the future. This is just a number from 1 to 151 or however big you're doing your project. And you can see that my Gemini is suggesting different code for me, but I'm not worried about that just yet. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to export a public string description. And this will just be a short description of the Pokemon. So like whatever you read inside when you're looking at your party and you select it, usually there's a little info thing. That's what this is going to be. And I'm going to turn off my Gemini so it stops suggesting me stuff right now because I don't need its help at the moment. Sorry about that, I turned it off. Not a big deal, as it could help you if you were exploring, but the only thing I'm going to be using it for later is maybe to generate like a toString for one of these classes. Next, let's create a new export category. This one is going to be a little tedious. This one's going to be called stats. So this is going to be things like the Pokemon's height, weight, its base experience, base hit points, attack, defense, special attack, special defense, speed, etc. All of that stuff is going to go here. Now we're going to need a variable for each one. They're going to be all integers, and it's going to be the ones that I mentioned. I'm going to put those in now. And you could follow along if you want, or you can skip to when this section is all done. I'm just going to fast forward through it. Let's move on to the next section. This is going to be our export category, and this is going to be our moves. So there's two things that we need. We need our learnable moves and our level up moves. Learnable moves are just any move the Pokemon can learn, whether it be from a TM, HM, or leveling up. And then the level up moves is going to be a dictionary, and the string is going to be the key, and that's going to be the name. And then the integer value will be the level that it's available at. So let's start first with our array, and that's going to be a public array, and we want the one from Godot, and it's going to be of strings, and this is just going to be called learnable moves. And then secondly, we're going to export a public dictionary. This is going to be a string integer, and this is going to be called level up moves. Finally, let's make an export category for our sprites. We're going to throw 5 sprites in here. We're going to have the front and the back, so that's going to be for battles eventually. A shiny front, a shiny back, and then a menu icon sprite. So I'm going to throw those 5 sprites in here now. I'm going to fast forward through it again, but it's basically just 5 texture 2Ds, 2 for the front, 2 for the back, and 1 for the menu for now. And finally, the last thing we should add is the Pokemon types. So let's go up and do that in the basic info. And we're going to export. And we should have the enum already. So we'll do Pokemon type. And this is our, we can call this the type 1. And then type 2. So some Pokemon have 2 types. Let's make the default for each of them none, just in case there isn't one for the second type. Some of them only have 1 type, so we'll just do this for now. And that should be everything we need. Let's go back to Godot and rebuild the project and make sure that we can create this resource. Inside of your resources folder, go ahead and make a new folder called Pokemon. And inside of it, you're going to create a new, we got to rebuild first. And here we're going to create a new resource. Search for Pokemon resource, and boom, look at that. And I'll just save this as new resource for now. Let's click it. And you can see here we have the name, ID, description, the types, all of this stuff, all your sprites, level up moves. Perfect. This is looking great. So now, if you just wanted to create your resources from scratch and you were just doing custom Pokemon, you didn't want to import any of the ones that are actually there, you just want to make your own, you can stop the video right here, and this is all you need for your Pokemon resource. But if you want to create a move importer, Pokemon importer like we did before, then stick around for the second half of this video. Okay, so if you're still sticking around, that means we're going to create our new Pokemon importer plugin. A lot of this is going to be copy pasta from the move importer, like the garbage collection, and the way we recognize variables like variants. That being said, let's go ahead and go through the UI and create this. So go to Project, Project Settings, Plugins, and then Create New Plugin. I'm going to call this one the Pokemon Importer. And then the subfolder will be this. And then the author is me. The description, this is to import 151 cool Pokemon, or something like that. I don't know, put whatever you want. Make sure the language is C#. And then my file is going to be called this. You can't activate it now because subfolder already exists. Oh, I was playing around with it. So let me call this, let me go delete that folder and try that one more time. So good to know. And let's go back and try that one more time. So Pokemon importer. And let's go ahead and make this the subfolder. Make this the author. Description is going to be to import some cool Pokemon. And then C#, and then this will be the file. Yeah, so if you have the folder already, it won't let you. I had it already because I was playing around with it between videos, so that's just something to keep in mind for the future. Go ahead and create. Now, if you go back to Godot and you rebuild, then when you go to project settings, then you can activate the plugin. So now the plugin is activated. However, this isn't going to actually do anything until we actually have some sort of menu item like we do for the move importer. So let's go ahead and take a look at the move importer first. and then come back and see what we need to do. So if I go to my add-ons here and I go to my move importer, you can see that I have my menu item that I add to the menu. I have this move that, or this function that gets called whenever this menu item is clicked. I have some garbage collection, some scanning of the files, and then something to create my move resource. So we're going to be doing something very similar to this. So I'm going to be doing a lot of copy and pasting. So first, inside the Pokemon importer, copy and paste these guys, and we're going to rename them to match our Pokemon importer. So import menu item text, we can name this import Pokemon. For our folder path, what we're actually going to call this is our resource folder path. And then I'm going to copy and paste that. And instead of the resource folder, I'm going to have a sprite folder, because I'm going to have both of these folders inside of this specific importer. So the resources folder for the actual Pokemon is going to be resources/Pokemon. And then for the sprites, it's going to be assets Pokemon. And that looks good. And the other thing we have to change here is this to the Pokemon call. And then the other thing we have to do is add our menu icon API path. So let's go ahead and do menu icon API path. And the reason why I'm putting this here is because we're getting our menu items, our sprites for the menus, from that website I showed you in the beginning. However, all the other sprites are provided from here as URLs inside of the actual return for each Pokemon. So I'm going to copy and paste the path in here from the browser. So this right here is the actual URL, and then everything else will be added to the end of this. So this looks good. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to do the add tool menu item that we did last time. And then here we're going to pass in our import menu item text. And then we have to add a function for it to call. So if you go down here, we're going to do a public async void import Pokemon. And let's go ahead, and I believe it's doing the callable.from. Yes, that's how we call it. And that will add it to the menu. And then when we exit the tree, we can remove tool menu item, import menu item text, boom. And then here we can just have a logging statement. We can say something like attempting to import Pokemon. And I'm going to save that, and let's go back to Godot and reload the project and test this. Back inside Godot, first rebuild, then go to project, tools, and you can see the import moves is here, but it's not in the actual menu yet for the Pokemon, so reload the current project. And then when you go to project tools, you'll see the import Pokemon here. So if I click this, the logging statement should show up for us. And look at that. It says attempting to import Pokemon. So now that the importer plugin is working, let's go ahead and start programming it out. So back inside our script here, let's go ahead and add a couple things here. First, I'm going to remove this system because we don't really need it. And what we're going to do is, like we did before inside of our move importer, we're actually going to use this function again, and that's to make sure that our folders exist. This time we have to do it for 2 of them. So let's paste this twice and copy in our resource folder path and our sprite folder path. That way, those directories are there and you won't get any errors that way. Much like we did before, we're going to do a const gc interval, and this is going to be for the garbage collection. Sorry, this is an integer. Whoops. So this will be used for every 10 Pokemon imports. Run the garbage collection just in case your computer is a little bit slower. The next thing we're going to want to do is create a for loop. And this for loop is going to be from 1 to 151. And this is going to be going through and trying to import each Pokemon. So for this, much like we did inside the move importer, we're going to want to add a variable here. So go ahead and copy this move numbers from your globals instance or wherever you're storing your global variables. And I'm just going to name this Pokemon numbers. And instead of 165, we want to go up to Pokemon 151. And that's going to be inclusive. So when we do the for loop, make sure you're going to do a less than equals to. Type in a globals dot Pokemon numbers. Perfect. Now, the next thing we can do is we can copy and paste the garbage collection from the move importer. You're going to notice we're going to be doing a lot of that here, and the delay as well. I think that's a good idea. And just make sure that you are using system GC. Oh, whoops. Maybe we do need the system. Hey, there you go. And then for task, make sure you have system threading tasks. And the garbage collection is working properly. In the top of the for loop, we're going to go ahead and log what we're doing. So let's just say something like processing Pokemon with ID and then the actual number you're on. So processing Pokemon with ID and then pass that in. Now our response, much like before that we do inside the move importer here, is going to be a dictionary that with strings as keys and variants as response. I'll pull up the actual response when it's time to start filling everything out. But a couple of the things are the same here. So I'm going to go ahead and copy and paste these in and then use them for our Pokemon importer. So let's go ahead and take a look at this. So our API path is the same, except we changed the actual definition here. So we actually don't have to make any edits because it's going to be Pokemon and then the number. And then the dictionary we want to use is Godot collections. And instead of calling this data, we're going to call this Pokemon data. And the reason why we're not just calling it data is because we're actually going to have another API call to get the description of the Pokemon. For some reason, this API uses a species endpoint to have all of the information about the particular Pokemon that isn't like stat related. That's fine. Those API endpoints are returned inside the original response, so we don't have to declare them up here. So I've pulled up Postman here, and I've actually gotten the request for Bulbasaur, so the Pokemon with ID 1, just so I can show you again, just as a quick refresher, what's going to be happening when we're going through each thing here. So the very first thing we want is the actual Pokemon's name, and let's go ahead and just check to see where that is inside of this. I'm assuming it's just going to be name, so I'm actually going to close some of these responses here because they're pretty big. Close moves. Yeah, so we know that it's in name Bulbasaur. So just as a refresher, how we're going to grab this is by creating a var, call it Pokemon name, and make that equal to Pokemon data at name. Now, since this is a variant, you have to call it as string. If for some reason the Pokemon name is busted, just do a string.is empty or null, or sorry, is null or empty, and then pass in your Pokemon name. And if that's the case, we're just going to do a logger.warning, and we're going to say something like Pokemon at this index has no name, ... That shouldn't happen, but if it does, we just want to avoid errors. And because we're using our own logging system, we'll see this in the console pretty clearly. So we're just going to save that. Now the next thing is we want to grab the description. So that's going to be from that species endpoint. So let's go ahead and look to see where that is down here. So if we go to species, this is the response that has the endpoint we're looking for. So if I control click this, oh, whoops, let me just, there we go. And I look for this here. We're going to keep this open on the side for when we come back to it because we're going to need that. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a var species is equal to Pokemon data at species. And we know that this is going to be a dictionary that is just strings. There's nothing else going on here. And what we're going to do is we're going to pass in the URL to grab our response. So let's grab our response, and this can be our species response. And instead of API path, what we're going to pass in is our species at the URL. That should be all we need. Next, we're going to save that species data. So we're going to save this response, much like we do here. So I'm just going to copy and paste this, put it down here, and I'm going to call this our species data. And I'm going to do species response instead of just our regular response. So we have all of our species now. So the next thing that we need to do, because we have all the other information that we need, is to create the function like we do in the move importer to actually create the resource. So let's go ahead and outline that right now. What we're going to do is first we're going to log like we do inside of our move importer. We're going to try and keep things in parity here just so everything looks good, and say creating resource for, and we'll do Pokemon name and do ... And then down below, we will create our function. So this is going to be a private, I believe it's async task, and we're going to name it create Pokemon resource. And it's going to take in a couple different things here. First thing it's going to take is our Pokemon name. Then it's going to take a dictionary that is strings and variants. And this is going to be our Pokemon data. And it's going to take the same thing for our species data. So before I start filling this out, I'm just going to actually call the resource up here. So here we're going to do an await, create Pokemon resource. We're going to pass in the Pokemon name, the Pokemon data, and the species data. Now this function doesn't actually do anything yet, but that's okay. If we go back to Godot right now and compile it, everything should work. So let's rebuild the project. And let's go to Tools and Import Pokemon. And you can see that even though it isn't actually creating any resources, you can see all of the names going by. Let me just scroll up, like Sandshrew, Sandslash, etc. All of these are getting identified correctly. All the IDs are correct. And it's just going to go through and call that function, even though it doesn't do anything, 151 times. And then once this is done, we can go back out and continue to fill out our code. So let's go through and start grabbing all of the info that we need. So if we take a look at the Pokemon species endpoint, the dictionary we're looking for, I believe, is called flavor text entries. And then it'll have the entry for that Pokemon in each specific game. So what we're going to do is, I highly suggest, by the way, that you go through these endpoints and look at all the dictionaries yourself so you can go through it as I have. So let's create a new variable and call it flavor text entries. And this is going to be our species data. That's going to be at, I'm going to copy and paste it actually, that'd be much easier. And this is as a dictionary. And it's string names. And this is still going to be variants. Or sorry, this is going to be an as Godot array. And it's going to be, the type is going to be a dictionary inside of the array. I apologize. So there we go, because this is an array right here. You got to watch out. And then the description is going to be, whoops. We're going to do a flavor text entries, and we're going to do a first or default because I'm only looking for a specific one. And how we're going to get that is I want the red, blue, or the, I want the English one. So whichever the first one is that is English is the one we're going to take. And we're going to do our entry. And I believe it is language, which is our variant. And that's going to be as a Godot dictionary. And it's going to be a string. We want the name. And if that is equal to English, that's going to be our first one. So let's just go through this really quick. Basically, it's going to scan the entries, give me the first one where the language name key is English. So I don't really care about the version right now. Just give me the first one because we don't have to get too complicated with it. The description really doesn't matter all that much. Now, what you can do is we can actually create our Pokemon resource. And well, you could declare more stuff up here if you want. But let's declare the resource and then we will create more things as we need them. So go ahead and create a var Pokemon. And this is going to be equal to a new Pokemon resource. And then using C#, you're going to open it with brackets here. And let's start very simply by creating the name equal to the Pokemon name. Next, you can do something like give me the ID. So make sure you have commas. And then this is going to be the Pokemon data. And anything I can access from the first level, I'm not going to create a variable for. I'm just going to access it directly. So I know inside my return, the ID is my integer, and that's going to be an int 32. And just to show you on this side, if we scroll up here, oh, sorry, that's the wrong one. The ID is just an integer on the first level. Next, we can grab that description. And this can be equal to our description. And we could check to see if this is null. So if this is not equal to null, we could just go with our description. If not, we could just say something like description not available. Or sorry, description, we want the flavor text, I believe. We'll double check that. Dot as string. There we go. Description not available. And let's just go over here to confirm that. Yeah, we want the flavor text, which is just a string. Perfect. Now for the types, I'm going to grab those last just because I have to do a little bit of code for that. But anything else that I could just directly put in here, let's throw in our height. And that's going to be equal to our Pokemon data. And that's going to be at our height as an int 32. And I'm going to copy this and do our weight. That's going to be the same thing, except at our weight. And then I believe base experience is the same. Again, you can double check your Postman return or whatever you're using to test the API. And do our base experience. Let's just double check. Base experience, yeah. And if you're ever not sure about the spelling, just copy and paste it. So let's stop there and let's go to Godot and test what we have so far. But before we test, I'm going to actually go and instead of doing all 151, just give me the first one. When we're testing, we'll just test with one so we don't have to sit through and wait for it to go through the whole API. Inside Godot, we're going to rebuild. And I'm going to delete this one that I created earlier. Let's go ahead and go to our project, tools, import Pokemon. So it says it created the resource for, oh, we didn't actually save the resource at the end. I apologize. Let's go back and put that in and then come back here. So back inside our resource, if you go to your move importer, what you can do is you can just copy and paste this whole save path thing down here, and we'll just edit it to save our Pokemon. So our save path is going to be our resource path, resource folder path, and this is going to be our Pokemon name, and we're going to keep it to lower, and it's going to have the same name right here. And then this is going to be the actual Pokemon is going to be the resource, and then there's a problem saving the Pokemon, and we can do the Pokemon name to the save path. There we go. Inside Godot, rebuild one more time, and then go to project, tools, import Pokemon, and then inside the resources, you can see that it saved the Bulbasaur. So let's see what happens here. We have the correct name. The ID is set to 1. The description is here, a strange seed. And then you're going to notice that some of the words are stuck together. That's because they have these new line symbols in them. We can go back and fix that at a later date. Don't worry about that now as the description is there. And the height, weight, and base experience all seem to be there correctly. So that's awesome. Let's keep going. Back inside your create Pokemon resource, let's go ahead and add the rest of the stats now. So let's just make our way down the Pokemon resource. So what we can do is we can grab our stats, and that's going to be a Godot array. And how we grab that is we grab it from our Pokemon data, and I believe it's stats. You can stats, yeah, and you can double check that if you want. That's going to be as a Godot array, and inside of it, it's going to be our dictionary string variant. What did I do wrong here? Pokemon stats as a Godot array. And then let's do this. Inside it, we're going to pass in our Godot dictionary. There we go. I don't know why that didn't work. Maybe I had a typo or something. I don't know what's going on. So let's go ahead and go through this loop. Now, inside this loop, what we're going to want to go is through the stats.count. And then inside of it, we're going to grab our stat. So our var stat is going to be equal to the stats dictionary at your index. We're going to grab the stat key, and I'll just show you that right here. Species, stats. So it has the base stat, the effort, and then the actual name. So the stat name, or sorry, the actual stat itself is going to be a Godot dictionary. And this is going to be a string, comma string. The value is going to be stats at this index. And then the key for this is going to be our base stat as an int 32. And then our parse stat, which is we're going to be grabbing from our stat map from our Pokemon enum, is going to be our Pokemon enum dot stat map. We're trying to get which stat we're working on right here. We're going to do a try get value, and we're going to pass in stat, and we're going to do an out var parsed stat, so we know what it is. And if it's something that makes sense, oh sorry, this should be name. I apologize. If this part stat makes sense, use that. If it doesn't, we're going to do the Pokemon stat none. And that way, if we actually do anything here and the stat's not recognized, we're going to have a switch case here, and we won't even have to worry about it. So here we're going to switch on our parse stat. We're actually not going to have a default case. I'm going to do the first one for you and then just copy and paste the rest. So we're going to check to see if we're working on our HP. Set our Pokemon dot HP, our base HP I should say, equal to the value. And then the next thing we need to do is break. So what's happening here is that if this is something like HP or attack, if this is part of the Pokemon enum, part of the stat map, and if you want to take a look at what that is, it's basically a dictionary to parse this. So if we go down here to our stat map, so if it's HP, it corresponds to this enum. If that's the case, if it recognizes it, we're going to increase the value for that specific stat. And there's no default case for none, so we don't have to worry about it if it doesn't match. Here, I'm just going to copy and paste the rest in to make life easier, but you can copy and paste it too or write it out yourself, totally up to you. The next thing we should take a look at is our moves, because now we got all our stats. So we're going to do our moves, and this is going to be equal to Pokemon data moves, and this is going to be a Godot array, and inside the array, it's going to be that dictionary again. And the dictionary is going to be strings and variant values. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to grab our level up moves and our learnable moves. So first, I think we should start with our learnable moves. And how we're going to do that is we're going to create a new function. We're going to do a private array as a string, because that is what our learnable move object is inside of our Pokemon resource. And we're going to do get generation 1 learnable moves. And the reason that we say it this way is because I really want it to be clear what this is doing. And we're going to pass in an array, and that array is a dictionary of string with variant keys, or sorry, variant values, and we'll call that moves. Oops, I forgot my comma. And then what we can do here is we can create a new array, and we can call this our learnable moves, and that's going to be equal to new, and you could just use that syntax for now. And what we could say is if the moves that we pass in are null and there's no moves, we can just return our learnable moves the way they are. So that will help us with any null checks. And then what we're going to do at the end is we're still going to return the learnable moves, and that should make the error go away because we're going to alter this this array. And what we have to do for our moves, let me go through here and find the moves. So this array, if you expand it, you're going to see the move name and then the version group details, and then it'll also tell you where the move comes from. So for example, version group yellow and version group red blue. We're interested in red, blue, and yellow because we're just using generation 1 move, so I don't want to do anything more than that. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a for each loop, and inside of our array we're going to do each move inside of our moves. I'm going to maximize this so you can see the code more, but I am following along what we have been doing. So the first thing we need is our version group details, and this is going to be a move, and then the key that we're using, I'm just going to copy and paste it from my other screen, is the version group details, and this is a Godot array, and I believe this one is string and variant, or sorry, as Godot dictionary. It's definitely an array, and the type is a dictionary. Sorry, these get confusing. And next, we're going to check to see if it's a generation 1 move. And how we're going to check that is we're going to get our version group details, and basically, we're going to find the result here by checking to see if any of them have the version group. And then we're going to do a function here. Inside this function, we're going to have a little statement. And first, we're going to grab our version, and that's going to be from the version group. And I believe that is version group dot as Godot dictionary. This one's a dictionary, and this one is string and strings. And we are going to grab the name key. I'll show you all this in a second. And we're going to check to see if the version is equal to yellow, or it's equal to, the version is equal to red dash blue. We want to return true. Else, we want to return false. So this will give us our, if this is a generation 1 move or not. So really quick, let's open up Postman. So what I'm asking it for is inside my version group details here. This is an array. Find me the ones, find me where it says that this is a red, blue, or a yellow move. So this is emerald. Let me see. Yeah, yellow, for example. This one is a yellow, red, blue move. So it's a generation 1 move. So we can return true here, and we can keep going. So if this is a gen 1 move, what we're going to want to do is grab the move name, and that's going to be from the move. And the key that we're going to use is move.as Godot dictionary. This is also string. And if you're following along with Postman, you'll know we'll want the name key as well. And this also has a URL key if you're really interested. And then you're going to do literable moves.add. And we're going to pass in the move name. Now, before we continue, we're going to call this in the function above. So how we're going to do that is we're going to call this Pokemon.learnable moves is equal to get generation 1 learnable moves. And we're going to pass in our moves. And let's go check out Godot and make sure that this is still working. So I'm going to rebuild. And I'm going to just click this or something to get out of my Bulbasaur here. And then I'm going to hit my project, tools, import Pokemon. And then let's open this up and see if we have our learnable moves. So it did create the learnable moves subset. However, the dictionary was empty. So let's go back to the code and see if we messed something up here. So let's add some logging here. Just say that we did find a generation 1 move. Found a gen 1 move. And let's see if that helps at all. So go back and import Pokemon. And we did find a Gen 1 move. We found 23 of them. So it is possible that having this resource here might not override it. So let's try that again. And now you can see that the learnable moves is up to 23. I'm not sure if it didn't actually overwrite it or I just needed to reload my project, but we can come back to that. So you can see here, these are all the moves in Generation 1 that Bulbasaur can learn. So this looks like it's working properly. So I'm gonna leave the resource here and we'll test that on the next one. So the next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna create another function similar to this one. And this one's gonna return a dictionary for us with strings and integers. And this is gonna be get level up moves. And this one is also gonna take in the moves variable that the first one took in. So here we're gonna declare a dictionary and call this level up moves, and that's just equal to new. Or you could just make it equal to this, I'm pretty sure. Whatever you want, doesn't matter. If the moves is equal to null, obviously we just want to return our level up moves. And at the end of the function, we're going to be doing the same thing, returning our level up moves. So you could just copy and paste that. So we're actually going to copy and paste this for loop because we do want part of this code. And I'll show you what we do want is if the move is a level up move or not. So this part we're going to keep. But the part we are going to change is checking to see if it's a level up move or not. So let's make this a little bit more complex. And how we're going to do that is inside we get the version, but we also want the method. So let's do a var method is equal to version group, and we're going to do move learn method. And I'm just going to copy and paste that to make sure it's correct. And that's going to be as a Godot dictionary as well. And this is string. And this is also going to be the name key. And the only difference here is that you want this condition to be true and you want the method to be called level up. So if the method is level up and this is a generation 1 move, we're going to return true. Now you could check the moves you already created, but that's not as important. We can just do it this way. And instead of bool is gen 1 move, we can call this one is gen 1 level up move or something like that. So here we can do this. And I just realized I actually need the version group details here. So instead of making this a bool, I'm going to change this to a variable and change this to a first or default because I actually need to save the version group. So let's get rid of this, I would say. And I'm just actually going to rename this to gen 1 level up move and change it to this and say not equal to null. There we go. And I think that's all I need to do to change it. So now it's actually saving this to a variable for us. And now we can say that we can grab our move name and we're going to grab that from the move key. And we're going to save this as a Godot dictionary. And that's going to be a string. And we want the name key. So we want this key right here. And then we're just going to check to see if our level up moves already contains it. If it does, we're just going to skip it because sometimes there's duplicates in the API. And if there's not, we're going to go ahead and add it. We're going to use the level learned at key, and we're going to do it as an int 32. And that should return this for us right here. And we could save that, and I think that's all we need for this function. And I go to my Pokemon here. You can see that I have the Bulbasaur loaded, but you can see this dictionary is empty. We have all the moves, but this doesn't have any in it. So I'm going to just get that off the inspector. Let's go ahead and go to our tools and import our Pokemon. And now let's go back here and refresh, or sorry, let me delete it and do it one more time. And I bet you I forgot to assign this inside. So let's see if I did that. So if I scroll back up here, where I'm actually declaring everything, and I did my learnable moves. Yeah, I didn't add my level up moves. So let's go ahead and assign that here and do our level up moves equals get generation 1 learnable. What did I name the function? I think I just named it get level up moves. So we'll just do that. And then we will pass in what was the input? It was the moves. So we'll pass the moves in here as well. And now if I save that and go back to Godot and rebuild, go to my tools, import the Pokemon, and double click. And I'm going to just add some logging here just to see if I have a level up move. So found a level up move and save that. And go back to Godot. Let's delete this, clear the console, rebuild, and try one more time. So it did find level up moves. Okay, so let's go to our Pokemon, double click this guy. There we go. I don't know why those weren't showing up before, but maybe I just had to refresh it and delete this. And you can see that they all show up now. So they aren't in order. You could organize these in order if you wanted to. But basically what it's saying is that, you know, if you catch a level, let's say 13 Bulbasaur, it's going to know Growl, it's going to know Tackle, it's going to know Leech Seed, and it's going to know Vine Whip. So actually probably what we should do when we do create our logic for actually making the Pokemon when you encounter them, you should have this list sorted and basically start at the level you're at and then work your way back down in order to eliminate the lower level moves. So let's say you start around here, it's only going to give you Solar Beam, Sleep Powder, Growth, and then Razor Leaf, and everything else it won't know anymore. So we could take care of that at a future date. But as far as this goes, we've taken care of all the moves, all the stats, and all that's left is the sprites. Now, before we go, there's one more function we have to create. I'm actually going to just paste these last ones in because it's a lot of repetition of what we've done. So the first function here, I'm going to add to the modules file, and that is a static function that is going to allow us to download a sprite. So an actual like PNG or like JPEG file from the internet. And this is how we're doing it. We're getting the array async of bytes from the image URL. We're converting it to a file, and then it's going into our return right here. And we're going to add a paste in a function for the Pokemon Importer 2, and that's going to be loading the texture from a URL. So let's add that here, and also make sure that we have system IO for file. And what this does is after it downloads the sprite from that modules folder, and once we have it saved to a variable, we take those image bytes, and then we convert them to something Godot can use, which is this image texture right here. And once we have this function in, basically this just allows us to download any of the sprites that we need and attach them to our Pokemon resource. So if you go all the way back up here, you'll remember that we have this menu icon path and these API paths and stuff. What we're going to do inside the create Pokemon resource is we're going to go down here after the level up moves, and we're going to paste in a few more things. And that's our front sprite, our shiny front sprite, our back sprite, shiny back sprite, and our menu icon sprite. So if I paste these in here, and then, sorry, I forgot one thing, and that's we want our sprites variable from our Pokemon data, which is just ironically called sprites. And then we're going to change this sprite path to what we have up here, which is our sprite folder path. So we're going to do this, this, and this. And then what this is doing is basically grabbing these 4 sprites from our API call and then grabbing this other sprite from the menu icon API path we have up there, because it's in a separate API, and it's just saving by the Pokemon name and saving it to the folder for us. So this should be all we need to actually download the sprites. Let's go back and just make sure this works correctly. So I'm going to delete this resource. No, not that. I'm going to delete this right here. And then I'm just going to save my project. I'm going to rebuild. And let's just import the Bulbasaur one more time and see if it works. So import, and everything seemed to work good here. So if I go to Pokemon and I double click, then you should see all this stuff. These sprites should be here. So I think this just might be a bug. Let me go double check and get right back to you. And whoops, I think I put those in the wrong spot here. I want to do that after I save. I thought I did that already. I'm not sure how that happened. So let's just move that back up here. Maybe I just pasted it in the wrong spot. Silly me. So let's save that. Go back to Godot one more time. Import Pokemon. There we go. So now you can see here the sprites for the front sprite, shiny front sprite, back sprite, shiny back sprite, and then our little menu icon, what we're actually going to use inside our UI. They all show up here. So it looks like it's working properly. I'm going to go ahead and set my Pokemon numbers to 151, import them all, then we can double check really fast, make sure they all look good, and call it a day. Okay, now that that's all finished, let's just take a look at a couple randoms here. So let's go to Abra. And you can see that the textures have all loaded correctly. Everything's here. It only learns teleport, that's correct. Yeah, so all this stuff looks good. Let's look at Diglett. And it's got its level up moves. All of its attacks it can know. Normal and shiny. Nice. Now let's look at Nidoran F. That's regular. That's shiny. And then Nidoran M. Or Nidorino, sorry. That's regular. That's shiny. Okay. I think that looks good. Let's look at Mr. Mime too, just in case. And that looks good. Oh, shiny's green. I didn't know that. Okay, sweet. It looks like everything here is working properly. So I think that the next proper step is either going to be some more level edits or working on our UI. The UI is obviously a big component to this game, so maybe that should be the direction we go in. So thank you so much for tuning back in, and I hope to see you in the next one.